Hi, I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Thanks for being here tonight on TCM. We're featuring movies with Star of the Month Jean Arthur tonight. Arthur first appeared on screen in 1923, a silent film, Cameo Kirby, directed by an emerging talent in Hollywood, John Ford. Despite that pairing of these two major talents, Jean Arthur's career took more than a decade to take off. She appeared in dozens of silent films in the 1920s, mostly low-budget B-movies, often without screen credit. Arthur attributed her early lack of success to a lack of formal acting training, which showed in her performances. I was a very poor actress in those days, she said. I was awfully anxious to improve, but I was inexperienced as far as genuine training was concerned. After completing a contract with Paramount in 1931, she took time away from Hollywood to hone her craft on stage. She made her Broadway debut a year later, then finally hit her stride in Hollywood in the mid-1930s, starring in a string of hits for Columbia Pictures, many of them screwball comedies, which became Arthur's specialty. Up next, a comedy teaming Jean Arthur with Herbert Marshall. From Columbia in 1935, If You Could Only Cook. It's a great title. Marshall is the wealthy president of a car company who's grown tired of his job and the people he surrounds himself with. On a walk in the park, he meets a young woman, that's Jean Arthur, who's out of a job. Without knowing who he is, she assumes he's also out of a job, so she proposes a scheme. If they pose as husband and wife, they could apply for work as a married cook and butler. The drumbeat of misunderstandings accelerates from there. This was one of 6 pictures starring Jean Arthur in 1935, a year that began with her breakout performance opposite Edward G. Robinson in The Whole Town's Talking. That movie, by the way, also directed by John Ford, who directed her in her silent debut. Critics finally took notice. One review of this film praised Arthur as outstanding as she effortlessly slips from charming comedienne to beautiful romantic. Here's the film from 1935, directed by William Sider, also with Leo Carrillo and Lionel Stander. If You Could Only Cook. Jean Arthur made If You Could Only Cook for Columbia Pictures a year after she signed with the studio and its notoriously difficult boss, Harry Cohn. With this film, Cohn pulled a particularly dastardly stunt, a bold stunt, too. It's hard to believe he imagined he could get away with it. He released this movie in England with the tagline, a Frank Capra production. Frank Capra, of course, was the studio's top director, but he had absolutely nothing to do with this movie. British theaters, though, paid a high premium for Capra productions, so Cohn took advantage and marketed the movie as a Capra film. Capra only discovered the scheme when he was in London and saw his name attached to the film, a movie that, again, he had as much to do with as I did. Capra was furious, and he went to battle with Cohn, not for the first time, not for the last time. Capra was already in the middle of another fight with Cohn, who refused to shell out the money for the rights to the hit Broadway play You Can't Take It With You, which Capra was eager to adapt for the screen. Both battles were resolved when Cohn finally relented and bought the rights. Capra's film hit theaters in 1938 with Jean Arthur leading the cast. Up next, Arthur returns in another romantic comedy, this one co-starring George Brent. More Than a Secretary from Columbia in 1936 is next on TCM.
Next on TCM, More Than a Secretary, then 7 Chances, and later, Battling Butler. There's no defeatin' Keaton tonight.